12-hour shift, 7 days a week, heat that could melt your skin off before you even hit the floor. And in Allegheny County, Pennsylvania, between July 1906 and June 1907, 1.5 fatal accidents every single day. 195 steelworkers dead in the rolling mills, not in mines, not in construction, in the mills, making the steel that built America. 10 killed by the operation of rolls. 22 blown apart by hot metal explosions. 5 asphyxiated by furnace gas. 31 crushed by the railroad operations in the steel yards. 42 killed by cranes. 24 fell from heights or into pits. 8 electrocuted, and that's just the dead. 509 more sent to the hospital. 76 of them permanently destroyed, crippled for life in a single year. This is the story of the machine that couldn't stop, the beast that demanded blood to make progress. The question everyone was asking: how many men does it cost to build a nation? We're going to find out how America built an empire on molten iron and immigrant backs, and what it cost to forge the 20th century. Before we're done, you'll understand why the steel mills of 1906 were both a masterpiece of engineering and a killing floor. And you'll understand what it took to finally stop the slaughter. The steel district turn of the century, Allegheny County, wasn't just industrial, it was the furnace of the industrial age. 70,000 men in the steel mills, 20,000 in the mines, 50,000 on the railroads, 250,000 wage earners in a county of 1 million souls. Pittsburgh wasn't a city. It was a foundry with houses around it. The sky ran orange at night from the blast furnaces. The rivers ran rust-colored from the slag dumps. You could taste iron in the rain. The rolling mill wasn't one machine. It was a system, a gauntlet of fire and crushing force that took a glowing ingot of raw steel and beat it, squeezed it, flattened it into rails, beams, sheet metal, the backbone of bridges, the skeleton of skyscrapers, the arteries of the railroad empire stretching coast to coast. Without the rolling mill, America stays small, wooden, fragile. With it, steel cities rising in a decade, transcontinental railroads spanning 3,000 miles, warships that could cross oceans, the 20th century itself. But could it work without killing everyone who operated it? That was the question nobody wanted to ask. Start with the blast furnace. Iron ore, coal, limestone. Superheated air at 3,000 degrees. Out came molten pig iron, poured into molds. Then open hearth furnaces, 40 tons of steel every 6 hours. Temperature, 3,000 degrees. Impurities burned out. What remained was silvery white steel. Then soaking pits. Steel ingots at 2450 degrees for 14 hours. Uniform temperature or they'd crack. That's where the killing started. The rolling mill, 2 massive steel cylinders spinning in opposite directions, 20 tons each, grooved to produce rails, beams, sheet metal. Feed a red-hot ingot between them. The rolls grab it, squeeze it, spit it out thinner and longer. The steel screams. Then you do it again. Each pass through tighter rolls. A 12-foot ingot becomes a 100-foot beam. Speed was everything. Below 1,800 degrees, steel becomes brittle. So you moved fast. When conveyors failed, men used tongs, long iron hooks. Grab the ingot manually while it radiates enough heat to blister skin at 6 feet. Step close enough to guide it, your clothes smoke. That was the tongsman's job. Stand next to a piece of steel that could cook you alive and make sure it went in straight. If it went in crooked, the rolls could catch it wrong. Spit it back at you like a rifle shot, or worse, jam. When a 12-foot ingot going 20 miles an hour jams between 200-ton rollers, things break. Steel breaks. Machinery breaks. Men break. The operators controlled speed, pressure, gap, watched the steel stretch, listened to metal scream, felt vibration through the floor. If something went wrong, they had seconds. Shut down or push through. Shutting down cost money, lost production, wasted heat. An ingot that cooled in the line was scrap. So the operators pushed through, kept the line moving, prayed the steel held. So they pushed through. And sometimes the steel didn't hold. Sometimes the men didn't either. But here's what made it impossible. This wasn't happening in isolation. The rolling mill wasn't a quiet workshop. It was chaos. Cranes overhead, swinging ladles of molten slag. Rail cars crisscrossing the yard every few minutes, hauling raw materials in and finished steel out. Furnaces roaring like continuous thunder. Gas lines hissing. Electrical systems with exposed wiring running everywhere because insulation couldn't handle the heat. Transformers the size of automobiles stepping down 8,000 volts to power the roll motors. And all of it, every single piece, operating 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because stopping meant losing money, and America needed steel faster than it could be produced. The system was unforgiving. Blast furnace to open hearth to soaking pits to rolling mill. Any break backed up the chain. The pressure to keep moving was relentless, fatal. The men working this system, immigrants, Italians, Poles, Slovaks, Hungarians, fresh off the boat, spoke no English. The pit boss shouted orders. If you didn't understand, he called you dumb. You learned by watching. If you learned wrong, you died. Crystal Eastman saw it. 26, fresh out of law school. The Russell Sage Foundation hired her. She spent 1907 to 1908 documenting every death. Industrial slaughter. Systematic. Preventable. Her report, Work Accidents and the Law, ran 466 pages, and it didn't pull punches. She called it what it was, preventable. Every single death, every single injury. The companies knew, the workers knew. The only people who didn't know were the ones who didn't want to know. 526 workplace deaths in 1 year. That's 1.5 per day in a 7-day work week. Nearly 11 deaths every week. 47 deaths every month. And the steel mills, just the mills, not the mines, not the railroads, accounted for 195 of them. More than a third of all workplace deaths happened in the steel mills. She created a death calendar. Every day marked with deaths. Christmas, men died. New Year's, men died. Only July 4th went blank. Immigrant death rates were double native-born Americans. They got the worst jobs. The belly of the beast, 12-hour shifts, no breaks. Every other Sunday, a 24-hour turnaround. At 40, you were done. Average career, 15 years. Then disability or death. No pensions. The heat was unimaginable. Furnaces at 3,000 degrees. Men drank 2 buckets of water per shift and lost 40 pounds in 3 months. One laborer. It sweats the life out of a man. The heat didn't just exhaust you. It killed your judgment, made you slow, made you stupid. Crystal Eastman documented it. Workers in high-heat positions had accident rates 50% higher than workers in cooler parts of the mill. Not because they were less careful, because human beings can't think straight when their core temperature is climbing toward heat stroke. Your vision blurs, your reaction time slows, you make mistakes, fatal mistakes, and the noise, thunder of hammers, hiss of steam, roar of furnaces, 100 decibels. You couldn't hear warnings. By 5 years, you were going deaf. By 15, stone deaf. The cost of making steel. Maintenance was a nightmare. The rolls cracked under stress. Changing them meant shutting down. The company pushed to keep running past safe limits. One more shift, One more ingot. When a roll failed, it exploded. 20 tons of steel at 300 RPM. Shrapnel at rifle velocity. The operator didn't stand a chance. The bearings had to be greased every 6 hours, by hand, while the machine was running. If the spinning shaft caught your sleeve, you were dead. If your sleeve caught, if the grease gun snagged, if you slipped on the oil-slicked floor, the shaft would pull you in, and there was no stopping it. The emergency shut-off, if there even was one, was 10 feet away. By the time someone reached it, you were already gone. They called it getting caught in the machinery. Your arm goes in, then your shoulder. If you were lucky, you were dead before the shoulder went in. Some mills had nicknames for the worst machines. Widowmaker was common. Death Trap got used, the hungry one, at a mill in Homestead. The men weren't being dramatic, they were being accurate. These machines had body counts. Everyone knew which ones. Everyone knew to stay alert around them. But alertness only goes so far when you're working a 12-hour shift in 140-degree heat on 4 hours of sleep. The mills knew. U.S. Steel knew their mills were killing men. Not because they cared. Dead men meant bad press and louder unions. In 1906, they started holding safety meetings. Talked about guards, shorter shifts, better training. Talked. The deaths kept coming. Dead workers were cheaper than safety equipment. The boats from Europe kept coming. The mills kept hiring. The staircase of blood. It started small. Near misses, warnings, but the system doesn't stop for warnings. Here's what killed 10 men in that 12-month period. The operation of rolls. Not exotic accidents, not freak events. The basic function of the machine. The thing it was designed to do. The ingot goes in crooked. Maybe the tongsman misjudged the angle. Maybe the conveyor belt shifted. Maybe the ingot was warped from uneven cooling. Doesn't matter why. What matters is the rolls catch it wrong. It bucks. Shoots backward like a cannon firing. 12 feet of white-hot steel, weighing 3 tons, moving at 20 miles an hour. Hits the tongsman in the chest and pins him against the wall. The impact kills him. The heat cooks him. His crew has to wait for the metal to cool before they can pull him out. Or it jams, and the operator clears it while the rolls are turning. The rolls grab his pry bar, whip it around, skull fracture. Or the rolls restart automatically with his arm between them. Pulp. Or the roll itself fails. A hairline crack in the cylinder, invisible to the naked eye, propagating with each compression until it reaches critical depth. And then the whole roll disintegrates under stress. 20 tons of hardened steel exploding like a bomb. The operator standing 10 feet away doesn't stand a chance. Shrapnel punches through his torso, severs arteries, punctures lungs. He's dead in seconds, and there's nothing anyone can do. 10 men, 10 different accidents, all variations on the same theme. The machine works exactly as designed, and the design kills people. 22 men, hot metal explosions. This was the nightmare. The thing every steelworker feared most. Ladles carrying molten slag. 40, 50, 60 tons of liquid metal at 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit, suspended from an overhead crane by a single hook. The ladle is a massive steel bucket lined with refractory brick, shaped like a teardrop with a pouring lip at the bottom. It weighs 20 tons empty. Loaded, 80 tons, all of it hanging from a hook the size of your torso. The hook slips. Why? Because the ladle wasn't designed with proper lugs. Cost-cutting measure. The engineers said it needed 4 attachment points for stability. The company said 2 was enough. So, the hook attached precariously to the rim. 2 points. All the weight on 2 points. The metal fatigues. The hook slips. The ladle tips. molten slag hits the floor. If the floor is dry, you get a pool of liquid fire spreading across the concrete. Men scramble, run, some make it, some don't. The slag moves faster than you'd think. Flows like water, but it's 3,000 degrees. Touch it, and you're not burned. You're incinerated. Flesh vaporizes, bone calcifies. But if the floor is wet, if there's condensation, if someone spilled water, if there's a puddle from the cooling systems, you get something worse. Molten slag hits water, instant steam explosion, the water flash boils, expands 1,600 times in a fraction of a second. The concussion wave alone can kill, ruptures lungs, stops hearts, throws men 20 feet, and the slag itself becomes shrapnel. The steam explosion aerosolizes it, creates a cloud of molten droplets moving at supersonic velocity. It's not a burn, it's a sandblasting with liquid fire. Men caught in it are carbonized. One account described a man roasted alive when a ladle spilled. His co-workers found him still standing, still upright, dead on his feet, carbonized. The heat had cooked him so fast his muscles locked before he could fall. At a Butler County mill, an explosion forced streams of molten metal onto the workmen. Some were engulfed, literally cooked. No bodies to return to families, nothing left to bury. In those cases, some mills would cast a block of steel equal in weight to the missing worker and give it to the family for burial in a closed coffin, a symbolic body, an equal weight of slag if that's what consumed him. The rituals varied mill to mill. Some buried a piece of steel from the fatal pour on the grounds as a memorial, a marker. Some set the tainted ingots outside and refused to process them. Superstition mixed with respect. Other mills had no ritual at all, just cleaned up the mess and kept running. 5 men, asphyxiated by furnace gas, carbon monoxide, odorless, invisible, heavier than air, so it pooled. The blast furnaces and open hearths produced it constantly, byproduct of incomplete combustion. Most of it vented through the stacks, most, but not all. Some leaked, some pooled in low areas, in poorly ventilated pits, in basement maintenance tunnels. A man climbs down to make a repair. Maybe a gas line needs checking. Maybe a pump needs greasing. Maybe there's a leak to fix. He climbs down the ladder into the pit. Doesn't know the gas is there, can't see it, can't smell it. Takes 3 breaths and collapses. Carbon monoxide binds to hemoglobin 240 times more effectively than oxygen. 3 breaths, and your blood can't carry oxygen anymore. You feel dizzy, then weak, then you're unconscious, then you're dead. By the time his crew realizes he's down, he's been oxygen deprived for 5 minutes. 10. Brain death. They'd send a second man down to pull him out. Same thing happens. Carbon monoxide doesn't care about bravery, doesn't care about good intentions. It just binds to hemoglobin and waits. Then you had 2 bodies, sometimes 3 before someone thought to ventilate the space first. 31 men, railroad operations. The steel yards ran their own internal rail systems. Miles of track crisscrossing the facility. Locomotives hauling raw ore from the docks to the blast furnaces. Flat cars moving pig iron from the blast furnaces to the open hearths. Gondola cars hauling slag to the dumps. Finished steel being loaded onto freight cars for shipment. All of it running constantly, 24 hours a day. No signals, no crossing guards, no right-of-way rules except stay alert or die. A man steps across the tracks with a load of tools. He's done it 1,000 times, but this time he doesn't hear the locomotive over the mill noise. The constant thunder of the machinery drowns out everything. He doesn't see it because it's coming from behind. The locomotive clips him, doesn't even slow down. The engineer might not even know he hit someone until he gets to the other end of the yard, and someone tells him there's a body on the tracks. If the wheels catch you, they don't stop. They cut clean through, leg, torso, head. The steel wheels on steel rails create a guillotine effect, clean cuts. The man next to you 1 second, in pieces the next. And the train keeps moving, because stopping a loaded locomotive takes a quarter mile, and nobody's got time to check every bump. 42 men, cranes. The operator sat 20 feet up, working levers through smoke. Cable snaps, 50 tons dropping. If you're underneath, you're paced. The whipping cable cuts you in half, or the load swings wide. The crane operator moves too fast, the load pendulums, sweeps across the work area, clips a worker who didn't see it coming, doesn't kill him outright, just breaks his back, severs his spine, paralyzes him from the waist down. He's 28 years old, married, 3 kids. Now he can't work, can't walk. The company pays him $300 and wishes him well. $300 to last the rest of his life. Or the crane itself derails from its track. The overhead rails that the crane runs on, they're mounted to the roof beams. The crane weighs 40 tons empty. It's carrying 60 tons, 100 tons total load on rails that were spec'd for 80. The rails bend, warp, the wheels jump the track, the whole apparatus comes down. 40 tons of steel and machinery falling from 30 feet up, lands on the work floor, crushes everything underneath. Men, equipment, doesn't matter, all of it flattened. 24 men, falls, from catwalks, ladders into pits, no railings, no harnesses. A man loses his footing 30 feet up, every bone breaks. Or he falls into a soaking pit at 2450 degrees, vaporized. Calcified bones were all that remained. 8 men, electric shock, exposed wiring, insulation that couldn't handle the heat, so they ran cables bare. 8,000 volts running through copper cables, the thickness of your thumb. Transformers stepping down power from the main lines. Junction boxes with covers missing because the covers warped in the heat. All of it exposed, all of it live, all of it lethal. A man brushing past a junction box. His shoulder touches the terminal, 8,000 volts. His muscles lock, can't let go, can't move. The current burns through him, heart stops, lungs stop, brain stops. He's dead in 3 seconds, but the current holds him there, muscles locked in a death grip. Someone has to hit the main breaker to kill the power before they can pull him away. Or a tool touches the wrong surface. He's working on a pump motor, wrench in hand. The wrench brushes against a bare wire. The current flows through the wrench into his hand, up his arm, across his chest. 8,000 volts looking for ground. Finds it through his feet, through his body, cooks him from the inside. They'd find him still holding the wrench, muscles locked from the current, dead eyes staring at nothing. But here's the detail that matters, the detail Crystal Eastman wouldn't let go. These weren't accidents, they were inevitabilities, built into the system, designed in from the start. The companies knew. The engineers knew, the workers knew, everyone knew. 12-hour shifts meant exhausted workers. Exhaustion meant mistakes. The steel mills operated on a principle. Fatigue was the workers' problem. A moment's lapse in agility and watchfulness may mean death, Eastman wrote. And then the companies scheduled shifts that guaranteed lapses, guaranteed exhaustion, guaranteed the lapse that meant death. No common language meant workers couldn't understand safety instructions. A pit boss tells a Slavic immigrant to shut down a machine before working on it. The immigrant doesn't understand. Nods anyway because saying, "I don't understand," gets you fired. tries to fix the problem while it's running, gets caught, and the pit boss shrugs and says, "These hunkies are dumb." No safety guards because guards slowed production. The engineers designed them. The prototypes worked, but installing them on every machine meant downtime, meant cost, meant reduced output. So they stayed in the prototype phase. The drawings looked good. The safety committee approved them, and they never got installed. No fall protection because harnesses cost money. Simple as that. A safety harness cost maybe $5. Installing anchor points on the catwalks cost maybe $100 per mill. U.S. Steel operated dozens of mills, thousands of anchor points, tens of thousands of dollars. And for what? To prevent falls that killed maybe 20 guys a year? The math didn't work. Dead workers were cheaper than safety equipment. No gas detectors because why invest in equipment when workers were replaceable? A carbon monoxide detector cost maybe $50. Installing them in every basement and pit and tunnel in every mill would cost thousands. But workers cost nothing. Fire one, hire another. One dies, hire a replacement. They were coming off the boats every day, desperate, hungry, willing to work for pennies. The companies had a term for it: acceptable losses, the cost of doing business. Every industry has them. Steel just had more, that's all. Nothing personal, just math. Southworks, Chicago. Southworks, Chicago. 20,000 workers, 11 blast furnaces, 12 rolling mills. Night shift accident rate was double the day shift. In 1906, Southworks killed 45 men, 45 families destroyed, 45 funerals, 45 widows, 123 orphans, and that's just the dead. Another 598 were seriously injured or permanently disabled out of a workforce of 10,000. That's 6% of the entire workforce permanently damaged in 12 months. 1 in 16 workers. Those odds. You work at Southworks for 16 years. Odds are you're crippled or dead. Work there for 30 years. The odds are nearly 2 to 1 you don't make it intact. William Hard investigated. His 1907 article, Making Steel and Killing Men, hit nationally. Did America have to keep paying this price to lead in steel production? The mill had its own hospital, its own police force, its own fire department. The hospital had a morgue. The police kept union organizers out. The fire crew recovered bodies. Information about accidents didn't leave the compound unless the death wagon was called. The death wagon was exactly what it sounds like. A black wagon with the mill logo on the side. Its only purpose was to haul bodies from the mill hospital to local funeral parlors. When the death wagon left the mill, everyone knew. The workers knew. The families knew. The community knew. Someone died. Funeral parlors were disproportionately represented near the gates of Southworks. 7 funeral homes within 3 blocks, like saloons and churches. The 3 pillars of Steeltown infrastructure: places to drink, places to pray, places to bury. The funeral directors knew the mill foreman by name, had standing accounts. The company would call, give them a name. The funeral home would send the wagon, prepare the body, send the bill to the company. The company would pay maybe $300, deduct $50 for the burial, give the widow $250. That was it. That was all she got. Minimal assistance was given to families. A worker dies, the company might offer a small payment. Might. No legal obligation, no compensation law, no requirement at all. If you wanted more, you sued. And if you sued, the company had 3 defenses, 3 escape hatches built into common law that made it nearly impossible for a worker or a widow to win. First, contributory negligence. You were partly at fault. Didn't matter if you were 1% at fault and the company was 99% at fault. Any fault on your part killed the lawsuit. You leaned too far. You moved too slow. You should have seen it coming. Your fault. Case dismissed. Second, fellow servant rule. Another worker caused it, not the company. Your co-worker was operating the crane that dropped the load. Your co-worker was the one who didn't signal. Your co-worker made the mistake. The company isn't liable for worker mistakes. Sue him. Case dismissed. Third, assumption of risk. You knew the job was dangerous when you took it. You saw the conditions. You saw the machinery. You knew men died here. You took the job anyway. You assumed the risk. That's on you. Case dismissed. The company had expensive lawyers. The widow had nothing, even if she won. Appeals dragged for years. She'd settle for pennies because she needed food now, not justice later. So widows took the payment, took their dead, took their grief, buried their husbands, raised their kids alone, and the mill kept running. The death wagon kept rolling. The funeral homes kept busy. The public outcry after Hard's article forced U.S. Steel's hand. In 1908, they launched a national safety program, made a big announcement, press release, newspaper coverage. They were taking safety seriously now, modeled the program on the one they'd just developed at Southworks, safety committees at every mill, monthly inspections, accident reporting requirements, prototype safety gear, photographs documenting dangers, and proposed solutions. In 1907, the American Museum of Safety opened in New York, first museum in the world dedicated to industrial safety. U.S. Steel sent exhibits, photographs from Southworks, safety equipment prototypes, training materials. The museum put it all on display. Look at how seriously we take safety. Look at all the work we're doing. Look at the equipment we're developing. It helped, some. Deaths declined, slowly. 1908 saw fewer deaths than 1906. 1909, fewer than 1908. The trend was downward, but slowly, glacially. Because the fundamental problem wasn't technology. It was economics. Safety cost money, and speed made money. And as long as the calculation favored speed, men would die. Just fewer of them. Progress measured in dead bodies per year. The law changes. Crystal Eastman didn't just document the deaths. She fought for compensation. Her work on the Pittsburgh survey caught national attention. The death calendar became famous, infamous. The image of that grid with its daily tally of dead men haunted people. You couldn't look at it and not feel something. You couldn't see 526 deaths marked out day by day and think it was acceptable. The governor of New York saw it, saw the report, saw the numbers, saw the human cost behind the statistics. He appointed Eastman to chair a new commission on employer liability. 26 years old, and she's chairing a state commission. Her job? Figure out how to make companies pay for the workers they destroyed. Her commission studied for 2 years. Germany had compensation. Britain had it. America didn't, because companies had power and workers didn't. But Eastman's commission changed that. They drafted a compensation law, simple in concept, revolutionary in practice. Workers gave up the right to sue. In exchange, employers paid into a state-run compensation fund. When a worker was injured, the fund paid out. Medical treatment, wage replacement, disability benefits, death benefits for widows and orphans. No fault, no lawsuits, no defenses. You got hurt at work, you got paid, automatic, guaranteed. The employers got something too. Protection from lawsuits, no more six-figure verdicts, no more unpredictable jury awards, no more bad publicity from court cases, just a fixed payment into the fund. Actuarially sound, predictable, cheaper than the litigation lottery. New York introduced the law in 1910. The legislature debated it. The companies fought it, argued it would bankrupt them, argued it would destroy American competitiveness, argued workers would fake injuries to collect, all the usual arguments. The law passed, and then the court struck it down. New York's Court of Appeals ruled it unconstitutional. The law was mandatory. That violated freedom of contract. Employers had the right to negotiate with workers. A mandatory compensation system violated that right. The law died. The Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire hit in 1911. March 25th, Saturday afternoon, New York City. Garment factory on the 8th, 9th, and 10th floors of a building near Washington Square. 500 workers, mostly young women, Italian immigrants, Jewish immigrants, making shirtwaists, women's blouses. Fire breaks out, starts in a scrap bin, spreads fast, the fabric, the lint in the air, the wooden floors. The whole building was kindling. The doors are locked. Fire escapes collapse. The women jump. 146 dead. The city watched. The public outrage was immediate and massive. The public outrage that followed broke something open. Something fundamental shifted. The companies could explain away industrial accidents, could call them the cost of progress, could argue the workers assumed the risk, but they couldn't explain the Triangle fire, couldn't explain locked doors, couldn't explain inadequate fire escapes, couldn't explain 146 dead women. States started passing workers' compensation laws. New York passed a new one in 1913, this time voluntary. Companies could opt in, most did. Pennsylvania passed its Workers' Compensation Act in 1915. Mandatory. Ohio, Massachusetts, Illinois. One after another. It wasn't charity, it was a trade. Workers gave up the right to sue. In exchange, employers paid into a compensation fund that provided medical treatment and wage replacement for injuries no fault required. Employers got protection from lawsuits. Workers got guaranteed compensation. Not much, but guaranteed. A broken leg got you maybe 6 weeks of wages. A lost hand got you maybe a year. Death got your widow maybe 2 years of wages, not generous, but more than nothing. More than the $300 and a handshake. By 1947, all 48 states had compensation laws. The 12-hour day ended in the 1920s. In 1913, 61 deaths per 100,000 workers. By 1997, 4 per 100,000, 90% reduction. The law forced companies to value worker lives, progress, what remains. Walk through Pittsburgh today, and you're walking on the bones of those men. Every bridge, every skyscraper, built with steel that killed 1.5 men per day. The bridges don't have plaques. The skyscrapers don't remember. Southworks closed in 1992. The 30-foot concrete walls still stand on Lake Michigan, too strong to demolish. They left them as monuments, ruins visible from the highway. The death calendar Crystal Eastman created, the one showing 526 fatalities in a single year, sits in archives now. The Russell Sage Foundation, Library of Congress, a grid of dates and causes, dry, statistical, black ink on yellowing paper. Until you remember, each mark was a man, had a name, had a family, came to America because they believed it was better than where they left, believed in the promise, believed in the opportunity, and it was better. Barely. The choice wasn't between safety and danger. It was between starvation in the old country and a 12-hour shift in a blast furnace. Between poverty with no escape and poverty with a chance. They took the furnace. They took the heat. They took the danger. And it consumed them. 195 steelworkers dead in Allegheny County, 45 in Chicago, thousands more across the country, in mills in Gary, Birmingham, Youngstown, Bethlehem. The exact numbers don't exist because companies didn't track them and the government didn't require it. We only know about 1906-1907 in Allegheny County and Southworks because Crystal Eastman forced the door open, because William Hard shined a light, because reformers demanded accountability. The rest, lost, uncounted, anonymous, men who came to America and died making steel, and nobody wrote down their names. Nobody counted them. Nobody cared. Just the cost of progress. Just acceptable losses. The rolling mills that killed those men are gone now. Scrapped. Replaced by safer systems. Computer controls, automated feeds, temperature sensors, emergency shutoffs that actually work, redundant safety systems, training programs, OSHA inspections, workers' compensation, wrongful death lawsuits, the entire architecture of industrial safety that didn't exist in 1906. Modern steel mills still kill workers. 2 died at Clairton Coke Works in 2025. Explosion, carbon monoxide, the same dangers that killed men in 1906, but not at the rate of 1.5 per day, not at 6% permanent disability per year, not at the scale where a single county in a single year produces 195 corpses. Progress happened. Slowly, painfully, reluctantly. But it happened. And it didn't happen because the companies woke up one morning and decided to value human life. It happened because reformers like Eastman documented the carnage, because muckrakers like Hard exposed it to the public, because unions fought for it in the streets and the courts, because workers died in such numbers that the public finally said enough, because the law finally forced change, because the economics shifted until dead workers cost more than safety. The steel that built 20th century America was paid for in blood. That's not metaphor. That's accounting. The bridges don't remember. The skyscrapers don't care. The railroads don't acknowledge it. But the record exists. 526 men in 1 year, in 1 county. And the only reason we know is because one 26-year-old lawyer decided to count. Decided that every death mattered. Decided that acceptable losses weren't acceptable. They don't make machines like that anymore. The rolling mills that demanded human sacrifice to make progress. The systems designed with death built in. They don't make them because we don't allow them, because the law won't permit them, because the economics won't support them, because we decided, finally, slowly, after decades of dying, that progress doesn't require blood sacrifice. And they don't make men like that anymore either. The ones who took the 12-hour shifts and the turnaround Sundays and the certainty of early death because it was still better than the alternative. The immigrants who crossed an ocean on the promise of opportunity and found a furnace. The ones who stood at the rolls and fed the steel and buried their friends and came back the next day because their families needed to eat. We don't make them anymore because we don't have to, because the alternative got better, because the law forced it, because the dead men of 1906 paid for the safety of 2026 with their lives. Progress has a price. Allegheny County, 1906-1907. 195 steelworkers, they paid it in full.